Hi and welcome. Today we're at Randolph Farm and we're going to be talking about how to grow a salsa garden. Many of you love salsa, and actually growing a garden with a lot of those components that make up salsa is fairly easy. You have tomatoes, onions, cilantro, peppers, and really many of you grow those anyway, so why not just kind of work towards a salsa garden and grow those. Today we're going to be talking about different ways that you can grow these, and one way is to grow a pot, a container garden with all these components. What you see here, we have a container, a fairly large container, about 12 or 14 inches in diameter. It's filled with with a potting soil that you'd get at a garden center. Not garden soil, but something a little different with different components. And this is something pretty easy to do. A pot this size, you need tomatoes. We can grow tomatoes in here. We take a tomato transplant like this. We're going to make a depression in here. This one's a little tall and leggy, so with tomatoes, you can bury them a little bit. We're going to get that down in there and cover it up nicely. So with a salsa garden, something tall like tomatoes you'd want in a container like this, and you'd want to maybe put something like cilantro in this on the perimeter. A little cilantro there, and you can grow that all around the sides. So when you take this out and put it on your deck or patio, this tomato is going to grow up nice and tall. You might end up putting some type of cage around this whole thing to keep it in, but you're going to have tomatoes, you're going to have cilantro. You could even put some onion sets in here. It's also nice when you're thinking about onion production is to get transplants, get the onion plants, and you can find those at certain garden centers, but to plant those directly in here, usually with those onion plants, you get a much larger onion at the end. So what you've got here is you've got a few components: onions, tomatoes, cilantro. And when you think about the tomatoes that you want to grow, you see the tomatoes behind us are really nice, big beefsteak slicer type tomatoes, and they're very juicy. You don't want a lot of that necessarily for salsa. You don't want so much juice in your salsa, so maybe a paste or aroma type tomato might be a better variety for this particular garden. So what you've got here, you've got your tomatoes again and your cilantro, and you could do the same thing with peppers. I don't have a pepper plant because we're not quite ready for those yet this time of year, but you'd put a pepper plant right in the center, and you could also plant some more cilantro and your onions or onion plants right around here. All in all, it makes a really nice container garden, a few of these pots maybe on your deck, on your patio, making sure that you get plenty of sunlight during the day. All these plants are going to require at least 6 to 8 hours of sunlight. It'd be great to have them in full sun if you could. Now, one of the things you have to think about here is watering. This type of media, this potting soil, can dry out very quickly, so make sure that you check it every day. Make sure these plants aren't wilting down. Make sure that you give it a good amount of water. Now, one of the things you can do, because all these plants need fertilizer, is to add maybe some type of liquid fertilizer throughout the season. And you'll find directions when you go to your garden center and buy the liquid fertilizer, that water-soluble fertilizer, you'll find the directions on how much you need to add for tomatoes and for peppers, and you can just add that in with a watering can. Now, another way that you could grow this is going to be out in the garden soil. And many of you love to grow these kind of components, and you can just grow them and put them together. But you might think about growing them in one plot. You could make a raised bed garden that maybe is 4 feet wide and 4 feet long. And every square foot you could grow some of these components. You might have one row, maybe 4 feet across, where you have 3 tomato plants. And that will work pretty well for their spacing. And the next row up of the 4 feet, you might have 4 pepper plants. Usually those are much smaller than tomatoes. They don't get as tall. So remember to put those tall tomato plants on the north side of your bed. With those pepper plants, you could raise hot peppers, chilies like habaneros, some of those hot peppers. You could also have bell peppers. It depends on how much heat you want in your salsa ultimately. And then in the front of that 4x4 garden space, you could have your cilantro and onions planted. So kind of having all that together in one area kind of makes you work towards your salsa. Well, this can be a great thing for all of you to think about. Children would love this, to work in containers, and they can help you grow your salsa garden throughout the year. Now, if you want to find more information about how to grow a lot of these plants together, please contact your local county extension office and talk to a master gardener. From the Ground Up, I'm Chris Mullins. We'll see you next time.
From the Ground Up is presented with the generous advice and assistance of Virginia Cooperative Extension. Visit their website at ext.vt.edu.